opportunities that arise from the two mutual beneficial countries, with respect also for sovereign states to make policy positions on foreign matters, on foreign policy independently on their own, and be able to stand firm, but while still having bilateral friendship in terms of economic trade. Indeed, women are a central part of what the AU has agreed upon in the last organ, where they've adopted two protocols in relation to women and youth mainstreaming on the policies of the African Union. This should be made a reality so that the women are not on the margins of either decision-making or in the economies of the various African countries. That includes of the youth. With regards to the peace mission, we support the current peace initiative that happened in Switzerland. We participated as a country through the security advisor to the President of the Republic of South Africa. We just did not sign the statement outcome from the meeting because there was a deadlock with regards to our position. We were of the firm view that for the peace mission to succeed, both warring factions must be on the table, Ukraine and Russia. We don't see how you can achieve peace in this process without also engaging with Russia. And it is for that reason that our president, when he led the peace mission, he spoke to both President Zelensky and also spoke to President Putin. So we believe that in the whatever peace mission initiative that must happen, it must include both parties so that there can be engagements that lead up to some kind of a solution. With regards to semiconductors, I believe that all markets in the world needs them. But I don't have very good expertise to be able to say this is where we're investing with regards to the semiconductors. But all markets do need the semiconductors. They are part of technology that is needed in the modern world. Thank you.
Right. I'm going to take... I will come back to you, but I do want to be democratic and allow those virtual guests also to ask some questions. Tiji, if you can bring up the notepad and pen for the Minister. So we have a question here from Funmi Ogunleshi, who says, how will His Excellency manage the delicate balancing act of assuring the West of its neutrality and goodwill while continuing to lead and strengthen its BRICS leadership with Russia and China in an increasingly multipolar and geopolitically fractured world? That's question number one. We have Carlos Lopes, who used to be the UNESCO Secretary General and I think is resident in Cape Town at the moment. He says, does the Minister believe that the Pan-African credentials of South Africa are undermined by xenophobic statements and disturbances provoked by some of the sections of South Africa? So that's the second question. And then there's a third question, which is by Carl Wright, and he's asking the following. He says, at the Abbey service this morning, I was reminded about the role the Commonwealth played alongside the UN in fighting apartheid. Minister, there are some people from the Commonwealth Secretariat in this room, by the way. Can the Honourable Minister tell us about his government's priorities for Commonwealth cooperation? So, for example, there is competition for the next Secretary General of the Commonwealth, which the three candidates are African. One is from SADC, from Lesotho. And then he's also asking Carl Wright about Shogum in Samoa. What is your view on Zimbabwe rejoining the Commonwealth? So those are the questions. I'm glad you see what fun it is to be at Chatham House.
Thank you very much. As I've said, with regards to the North and South relations, we continue to engage at bilateral level and in various multilateral platforms. And we believe this is a mutually beneficial relationship that must benefit all the participants. There's no one begging for any aid or development, but we engage as equals in bilateral engagements with our North and South engagements forum. And we believe that such views like we hold on various human rights issues and our foreign policy should not really jeopardize the relationship that we have with the bilateral relationship with any country. We should not be punished for the views we hold in terms of upholding human rights, because the views we hold are informed by, firstly, our constitution, our national interest document, and also by various charters of the UN guiding us on human rights, including various conventions that the UN has. And we continue to engage to deepen our strategic relationship with countries in the North. With regards to whether we believe that the Pan-Africanist credentials are undermined by some sectors, xenophobic, some sectors of South African society. There has been research in South Africa conducted by the South African Human Rights, by the South African Research Council, which indicated that South Africans are not xenophobic. And they are indeed sometimes individuals who commit crime against foreign nationals in South Africa, and such individuals must be dealt with in terms of the law. If it's a crime against any foreign national, it must be dealt with as a crime. And if it's a crime against any South African, it must also be dealt with as a crime. The criminal justice system must be able to process such individuals. They must be tried and prosecuted, and where evidence exists, proven beyond doubt, be convicted. With regards to our view with regards to the Commonwealth and the UN's role in fighting apartheid, indeed, we did mention earlier on the West Minister that it was an important role that was played by the Commonwealth and the UN. In fact, both the organizations played a huge role, including to boycott products from South Africa, to campaign for the exclusion sanctions against apartheid South Africa. It is also against that background that we continue to participate in the Commonwealth as one of the members. And the UN also had a resolution that declared apartheid a crime against humanity. With regards to the candidates from the African continent, indeed we support the candidate. We will be able to make a firm decision after deliberations as to who amongst the three candidates that we support in South Africa. With regards to Zimbabwe rejoining the Commonwealth, we have always been against the sanctions against Zimbabwe, because we have always believed that they harm us the same way they harm Zimbabwe, because the economy of Zimbabwe ended up really struggling. It's not only the individuals, and when the country itself is affected, when the economy is not functioning, people of Zimbabwe will have to find refuge in South Africa. So it's against that background that South Africa has always been firm that the way to resolve the dispute in Zimbabwe is to allow the people of Zimbabwe to go through their own democratic processes, their own systems, and resolve the crisis with the help of the people of the world. And we have played a role in that regard. So we will always welcome Zimbabwe being allowed to be a member of the Commonwealth.
Thank you very much. Let's get some more questions. I haven't done this side so far. So lady down here first. Further in front, yeah. We've still got reasonable time. Go ahead, introduce yourself.
My name is Esther Kaboche. I come from the Republic of Kenya. My question is rather direct. It's coming from development and trade. Development trade with the nexus to security. As we know, development is a big part of Africa, and it's coming to, take Africa to the next level. In terms of trade, which is the Africa Free Continental Agreement, trade agreement, are we looking at this? Is South Africa, which is the only country in Africa that has strategic control laws, which basically controls the movement of goods that have dual use purposes, which is security, which is civil purposes and military purposes. South Africa has the law that is in place to control that, but other countries in Africa don't have that. So if we are to look at the security of those goods in terms of emerging technologies, how is South Africa going to be able to champion that towards security and trade?
Thank you very much. I'm looking right at the back, actually. So, yeah, I guess you. Yes? Yeah. It's the furthest hand at the back. Yeah.
Thank you. Paul Milley, Chatham House. Honourable Minister, could you tell us about South Africa's view of its relations with the rest of the continent, particularly beyond the SADC region, and how you think the African institutions should deal with countries where we've had military coup d'etat? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, my goodness. Well, let's go to the far here. We've still got more time. The good thing is that this minister spoke briefly, so we have plenty of time. Yeah.
Ammar Sawad, journalist and Chatham House member. South Africa played a huge role in Sudan before the war. Why stop now? What happened? What is the role of South Africa in this country? And what is its attitude to the military cause in many countries in Africa?
Thank you. Minister, lots of the questions I'm getting online are similar. What are you going to do about Sudan? And also, how are you handling the coups that are taking place on the continent?
Thank you very much. With regards to the Africa Free Trade Area with the nexus to security, indeed, it is something that, as part of the engagement on the Africa Free Trade Area, was raised as a concern. But the countries have now agreed in the majority for the implementation of the Africa Free Trade Area. The next step is to build the capability and the capacity in individual countries by themselves to be able to enable the free movement of the goods. And where there is a need, the African Union will support and help with such a capability and capacity. And South Africa is also standing ready to provide the support where is necessary. And I'm glad that the first shipment of goods has happened between South Africa and Ghana, and both countries exchange notes in terms of the capabilities and the capacity needed, including the technology to implement this Africa Free Trade Area arrangement, which I believe can be extended to many of the players and the signatories, member states, to the Africa Free Trade Area. What is our role with regards to what is our views with regards to coups? We are a constitutional democracy in South Africa. We believe in superior logic that the change of government must happen through the pen. Where they vote electronically, it must happen through electronic voting. We condemn any form of coup anywhere in the world, including in the African continent, because we believe that they are not part of helping societies to be stable and orderly transition in government. We have just recently come out of very painful elections. and I believe this is a good example to anyone in the African continent. The ANC, for the first time, did not get a decisive majority as a liberation movement. 30 years after being in power, and after many years of struggle, which we celebrated today, it's not easy to just accept that you have now not received the decisive majority. But we're gracious and saw this as a message from the people of South Africa for us to rebuild trust, to reconnect with society, and to rebuild the institutions of democracy. There were parties, certain fractions of parties that wanted to undermine the outcomes of the elections. For the first time in the history of our elections, they even attempted to go to court, like the MK party. We accepted, we're the first party to accept the outcomes of the elections. And I believe that should be a message to the entirety of the African continent, that where things becomes difficult, even whether you're a liberation movement or you're in power, you accept the reality and build from that. And if there are grievances, which there are, I mean, there's no part of the world where there are no grievances. And in also many parts of the African continent, there are grievances with regards to governance issues. We should be able to use the institutions of governance to raise the grievances and find a solution. And I believe that such institutions exist. And where there are challenges in internal countries, the African Union should be able to give the platform to such grievances and concerns. And I believe that particularly with the approval of the protocol on youth and women, we must be able to put more focus as the African continent to resolve most of the grievances that young people of the continent are having, which is unemployment, poverty, and inequality. If we can work as a collective to implement these protocols, most of these grievances of African resources being beneficiated in the African continent, getting the young people to work, to benefit the mineral resources, and also to participate in emerging and new technologies and new development that includes AI, cryptocurrency, and so forth. It will harness the energies of these young people and ensure that they participate, including the women of the African continent. It is also against this reason that South Africa is also leading an initiative on the issues related to strategic minerals. What do we do as a continent? At first, there was a commodity boom, which the African continent was just for extraction. And those minerals have been processed or beneficiated outside the continent. But now with the new technologies that needs some of the strategic minerals like lithium and so forth that are only found in some parts of the African continent, there must be a conversation. How do we ensure that these strategic minerals are beneficiated in the African continent, are manufactured and processed, and we trade with the world on that level, but that will also need more direct investment because we may not have the resources to beneficiate and all. So the Africa Free Trade Area flagship will really help us to move towards that implementation. It will also help us to see how that can be achieved, including this discussion on the strategic minerals. I know that some of you participate in such kind of discussions. The issue in Sudan, what happened, whether we're still there or not, indeed we are still there. As you will be aware, our president spoke to one of the leaders, the general, and there are processes for him to speak to the other leader. And we will continue to open the lines of communications for both parties to be involved, be engaged in an initiative to find a peace in the area. And also the external players in the conflict, because it's an open secret that there are a lot of external players, not only in Sudan, but in the eastern part of the DRC, that must be engaged to find a long-lasting solution.
So thank you very much. So let's move towards the front now. So the lady here, first of all, with the red jacket. Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Monica. I work for a global health organization called PATH. And Your Excellency, my question is regarding G20, and it's a multilateral convening to basically discuss how do we cultivate stronger economies. But we can't have stronger economies without healthier populations. So I'd love to hear more from you about South Africa's G20 ambitions, especially focusing on health with climate change and antimicrobial resistance and emerging health threats. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Minister, I'll just add to that, because there's a question here by Gail Smith online, who's saying that the Brazilian priority is tackling inequality as a central pillar. So the question is, are you going to follow that agenda, continue it from Brazil, or are you going to add something else? Now, the gentleman here who's sitting in business class right in the front here, obviously I have to offer him a question. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you for the opportunity, and congratulations, Minister. Joe Mujapelo is my name, from South Africa. Minister, you know, in terms of our South African laws, you are above the age of youth, but you still remain a young minister, and that's very encouraging. And congratulations for that. Just a quick one, Minister, and I think it's linked to some of the questions that have been raised, but I'll put it slightly different. In that the Yamoussoukro Declaration calls for open skies agreements amongst the African countries, precisely to facilitate ease of movement of people, goods, and services. And yet, on the ground, some of your colleagues are calling on stringent border controls or borders amongst African countries. So in the skies we are opening, on the ground we are closing. What is it, Minister? Do you want to open the boundaries or do you want to close them? And I would like to hear your views. Thank you.
Okay. So, gentleman there with the hat, please. The microphone's just next to you. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. Minister Jeff Hill, the Washington Times newspaper, normally based in Johannesburg, I might add. And so, may I just say that after 40 years in journalism, I wish more ministers could pack so much detail into such a short speech. It's a delight. Minister, you have Ian Khama of Botswana currently living in exile in South Africa. You have an election coming up in Botswana shortly, and of course he is not exactly campaigning, but is certainly very involved. Has this affected your relations with Botswana? And on Botswana and on South Africa, you've got Anglo-American about to sell De Beers and selling your platinum mines. I know this overlaps with Minister Gudimantashe and others, but do you have a view on South African assets being sold abroad, particularly strategic assets? Thank you, Minister.
Okay, I think there's plenty on your plate there, Minister.
Yeah, thank you very much. With regards to the G20 and health and what is our priorities with regards to the G20, when I started, I did mention that we will want to see a just world order in terms of financing for developing countries emerging out of the G20 program. And we have, as you are aware, we had hosted the conference against racism in Johannesburg in Devon some years ago. So when we host the G20, it will be the 20 years of celebration of that period. So we will also have to link it with the global solidarity, with the various initiatives that we have in the world in terms of solidarity. And with regards to health, fortunately, our president was mandated by the AU in terms of health diplomacy during the period of COVID, where he was involved in the negotiations with regards to the vaccines that were hoarded in some parts of the world in the north and not being distributed equally, even when we had resources to the African continent. And that experience will position us well to continue to advocate for a just, well process in terms of the WHO that enables a fair participation and also linkages in terms of health and capabilities and capacity. The world was in a maze, sometimes confused with the capabilities that South Africa had during the COVID-19 period. And sometimes we were ridiculed for telling the world that now a new wave of COVID has come in because of our advanced research capability. It's only after the world realized that what we've told them is new development that they started to stop to ridicule us, but to follow and link with our research institutions. And we will want to continue with that capability, to showcase that capability even to the G20 countries and partners in terms of health issues, in terms of global governance. With regards to Mr. Ian Khama, it's true he's in South Africa, but there's no formal South African government position that is in exile in South Africa. I think he visits from time to time and engages, participate in the tourism and so forth. But we have not yet formal concerns raised by the government of Botswana that there are concerns about his frequent visit to our country. And if it's raised, we will look into the matter and respond appropriately to the Botswana government. As far as we know, our relations with them are still in good standing. We engage from time to time on a number of bilateral issues on friendly terms with the government of Botswana. Our attitude with regards to the strategic minerals, as I've said earlier on, it's a discussion that is currently unfolding with regard to strategic minerals. The Anglo deal and the intentions and so forth, I believe that the board of Anglo is dealing with it, and we will also deal with it in lines with our laws and regulations in South Africa, which are clear, fair, and transparent in terms of how such a deal of that nature, under what circumstances can it be approved. And we also have various regulatory bodies that it goes through: the competition commissions, the takeover regulation panels, and also the Mineral Petroleum Development Act. All of them come into being, and there is certainty and clarity as to why, how, and what must be done. Thank you.
Okay. So the gentleman there who's been putting his pen higher than everybody else. No, at the front. No, there's a competition of pens now. Yeah, you. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. My name is Jack Lambert. I work at a geopolitical advisory firm called Gatehouse. I was just wondering, on the JETP, Just Energy Transition Programme, what needs to happen to get that moving faster? There seems to be stuff around Eskom's willingness to accept more loans and Western views on gas. But I guess more generally, to flip the political instability question, when you now look at the G7 and see Biden, Trudeau, Scholz, Macron, even Kishida, how do you interact with the G7 with all that change that might be coming?
Thank you very much. The lady there. Yep. Go on.
Hi, thank you very much, Your Excellency, for your speech and for your very in-depth answers. My name is Lisa Clausen. I'm a researcher at Oxford University. And I was wondering how a second Trump presidency might influence South Africa's position under the AGOA agreement. and whether the government is making any preparations. Thank you.
Okay. We'll try and get one more round after this. The lady there. Yeah, go on. Yeah.
Good evening, Minister. My name is Mamello. I'm a master's student from South Africa. I'm doing a master's in health policy and financing at the London School of Economics. Chevening scholar. Thank you to the British government for funding our master's scholarships.
Congratulations on the scholarship.
Thank you very much. Minister, I'd like to follow up on the question from our colleague from PATH, who asked about health systems specifically. So in light of our President Cyril Ramaphosa signing the National Health Insurance Bill into law, looking at the fact that we have, our government of national unity and the known systemic and systematic challenges within both the public and private health sectors in South Africa, what is the feasibility or how realistic is it that the national health insurance will be implemented successfully in this term with the government of national unity? Thank you.
Okay. Why don't you answer those and then we'll see how much time we have for one last thrust.
Yeah, thank you. The JEEP Energy Transition Program is still in force and under implementation. We, however, had challenges in our country of load shedding. I don't know what you call it here.
Power cuts.
Yeah, power cuts. Power cuts. Which were occasioned by a number of factors, the capability of the energy generating company, ESCOM, including a lack of reform in the energy space, which were enabled through the energy reform legislations that enabled individuals and the companies to produce their own capability in terms of electricity. But we also ramped up maintenance of the power stations of ESCOM, which improved the energy availability factor and its capability to produce up to almost 70% energy availability factor now in South Africa, which has helped us to have almost 100 days with no load shedding. I never thought I would live to see such, where we have to celebrate. But this also had to come at the reality of us continuing to use coal, which is a natural resource that we have. And the JEET program's expectation is that we had to decommission some of the power stations. So we had to mothball, bring them back, the decommissioned power station, to work and use the available natural resources that we have to help us to continue to have energy supply that is sustainable, that is available, and that is stable. So it also impacts on the amount that we can claim from the JEEP program in terms of the other renewables. But there has also been a program on renewable that is moving, which also renewable energy has brought a lot of power now into the grid. So we have to balance the transition to be just. I think that is a term that is delaying a bit for it not to move at a faster pace, because the transition to just should not leave us with no electricity. The same capacity that we use as we build the new energy and all that is not as equal to as we decommission the power station. So that is the reason why we still need to continue with the some of the power stations that are dependent on coal, which is a natural resource that we have. And also many parts of the global community, particularly in the north, have used coal to industrialize, and they were able to survive. We must also be allowed to use it and to have a transition that is just. So I think that is the only aspect where there are issues, the pace of the transition. Because we are saying it should be just, it should enable us to go with the population, with our capacity to generate electricity, but also to, as we move to renewables, have people that are moving from those areas to be employed in the new renewable energies, because we have got a high level of unemployment in South Africa. So that transition must be indeed just, people-centered. So that is where we are agreeing that indeed there must be transition, the new sources of energy are now changing and so forth. It's a reality, and we are the most impacted in terms of climate change, but it must be done in a sustainable manner and a manner that is just. With regards to the NHI, the Trump presidency, the bill she's referring to is a bipartisan bill. It came from both sides of the American Congress, the Democrats and the Republicans. In South Africa, we had sent a delegation to engage with both sides, and we will continue to engage with the lawmakers in the U.S., including the American government with regards to AGOA. We are of the view that it's mutually beneficial. It's beneficial to us, and it's also beneficial to the U.S. There are strategic minerals that the U.S. can only find in South Africa, that they must see this as an opportunity for both sides. It's not only a beneficiary to South Africa, it's also beneficial to the U.S. So all of us, as we engage with them, both sides, it's an engagement that we believe that if AGOA continues with the preferential benefit to our country, it's a good program that benefits us, but it also benefits U.S. because some of our products are able to go to the U.S. in a preferential way. With regards to how we're going to continue to engage with the G7, we view, as I said earlier on, all multilateral institutions the same way, that we must participate. There is the African continent, and where South Africa also participate, we must be on the table. Our views must be inside there. We raise them there sharply about issues of for developing countries, just transition, and so forth. But we must be on the table. So it's the same attitude we have with regards to the G7. How do you view the second Trump presidency? Unlike any other country, we don't decide for citizens of other countries who they must vote for. It's up to the Americans who they want to vote for. We will engage with whoever the Americans vote for. As I've said, we're engaging with both sides, the Democrats, the Republicans, but it's up to Americans who they want to vote for. So we are watching the elections like all people of the world. We will not, unlike any player, try to intervene, do anything silly in the U.S. We obviously, as Democrats, condemn the incident that happened to Mr. Trump, and we hope that there will be peace in the elections in the U.S. They must not solve their problems through violence or through the barrel of the gun. They must solve it through the barrel of the pen in the ballot box, and those who vote by mail and electronic, they must do so through that electronic platform. The NHI, I'm happy I'm here in the Great Britain. It's the home of NHS. So you know its challenges here. It has challenges, but it has also had its advantages. we are also learning from yourselves, from the UK, and we view it as a finance mechanism. South Africa is one of the most unequal societies in the world, with the very advanced private sector and the public sector that is absorbing almost 90% of the population, with 10% of medical aids absorbing the private sector one. But the challenge we have is that with that 10%, it's also subsidized by the state. So you find a budgeting system that is skewed in favor of the few. Even myself, seated here as a member of parliament, my medical aid is subsidized. The private members' medical aids, they are also subsidized by the state. But the general public going into the public hospitals in South Africa, they don't receive the same. The budget is skewed in favor of the rich. That's what I'm trying to say, that most of the budget goes to the private individuals and the ones going into the public. So this is the finance mechanism we are trying to solve as government. And we're not saying it's perfect. What we are saying is that it cannot be vilified, that we cannot try to solve the problem. And that is the environment that is currently in our country, where an attempt to solve this problem, this financing and funding problem of our health system, is vilified. So how are we going to find a solution if an attempt is vilified? So we are saying it must be implemented. And that's why the president has signed the NHI bill. It must be implemented. The challenges that are identified and the lessons that we are learning in the Great Britain, we must solve them in the process of implementation. Because if we don't implement or attempt to do anything, we will never have a solution to our health care problem. Thank you.
Okay, we've run out of time. I'm going to ask one question online, and then I'm sorry that we've been defeated by the clock. And the Minister has been answering questions for 45 minutes, which is pretty much a record for a foreign minister in this hall. There's a question from Tim Cole. Now, Tim Cole used to be a British diplomat. He served in Mozambique, in Zimbabwe, ended up being British ambassador to Cuba, but he now works for an NGO, hence maybe the question. He's not British government any longer. So he says, Excellency Minister, you met David Lammy, and David Lammy, the new UK Foreign Secretary, has said he wants a reset in relations with the Global South. So Tim's question to you, Minister, is which British policies do you believe are most in need of a reset?
Yeah, thank you. I had indeed a very fruitful engagement with Mr. Lam, and the spirit was very good, where he was very clear that our relation should not be based on the fact that we are a former British colony. It should be based on equal beneficial relationship, which I think was a very good start in terms of economic trade engagements and investment in both countries. Two friends, mutually beneficial relationship. That is his view, and I agree with him that it should be like that. We should see ourselves as equals, friends, with mutual beneficial relationship, and we agreed to work on a number of issues: the just transition, the situation in Gaza and Palestine. He also told me that he had very fruitful meetings in his visit there. And we agree on the cessation of fire immediately, on the respect of international law, in particular on humanitarian aid. So there is a lot of commonalities between ourselves, I believe, and the Great Britain, and it's a relationship we will harness, we will build for the mutual benefit of both countries. Thank you.
Minister, thank you very much. You've spent the whole...
I forgot, the point where we really did not agree on each other is the Ukraine-Russia, how the Great Britain views it and how we view the resolution of the conflict. But we agreed to continue to engage. Thank you.